Hey everybody, I'm Ann Atkins, a metal clay artist, also metal smithing. This is a tutorial on making these Moroccan bronze earrings. They have a fire in place opal on them, and they were made out of gold bronze clay. For the Cricut, you will find that fresh clay or supple clay works the best. Clay that you can manipulate like this clay, whether it's fresh or whether you add some flex to it. Um, Dry clay will not be your friend. It will get crumbly and it will crack. There's two ways I like to prep it. You can do it in the dehydrator on a low temperature, like 110, or you can leave it on your bench overnight to dry, which is what I like to do if I really need good flex or if I'm going to do intricate cuts on it. This will be using the Cricut Explore 2 to make these earrings. And let's get started. Okay, so here are the two pieces that I dried. The one on the left was in the dehydrator, and the one on the right was on my bench. I'm showing you the one on the left. It's nice and smooth and flat. The one on the right is also, but it's got a lot more flexibility to it than the one on the right does. And these are just rolled out 3 carats thick with your usual metal clay tools, nothing fancy. One thing that helps to prep the clay is to take your roller and roll it out even further. This is known as freshening up the clay or waking up the clay, and it kind of compresses it and makes it even a little bit more flexible. Something else you can do is put it in the refrigerator overnight if you really want more flex to it, but this usually works pretty well. And I'm showing you how the stiff piece that was dried in the dehydrator on about 110, how it became more flexible. And then even the flex piece will become more flexible here. You can add a little bit of flex to your clay. I like Joanna's Flip and Flex at Metal Clay World. And if you're trying to do ring band or intricate cuts, it does help quite a bit. So see, there you go. You make it even more flexible than it was. Look at that bend. Okay, so now let's go and prepare our mat for cutting. There are a lot of ways to prepare your clay to cut on your Cricut. The right way is what works for you, what you find holds the best. For this project, there's not going to be a lot of intricate cutting, and it's not a very thick piece. So all you really need is a strong grip Cricut mat, and it needs to be the purple strong grip. The others will not work. And also the strong grip transfer tape. Those two things will do fine. If I'm going to cut a thicker piece or an intricate piece, I'll put some masking tape on the ends of it to help hold it. I want to cut my strong grip tape a little bit larger than my clay pieces so that it totally covers the mat and there's no piece of the clay that is not on the tape. I put it in the middle of the mat because If you have to do a second or third cut and it's up in the corner of the mat, then it's hard to see if the cut is well, and it's hard to do anything with it without unloading it. You don't want to unload it at the end of your first cut, because if you need to rerun it, you want to leave it at the same setting. To rerun it, you just have to hit your C button twice and it'll run it in the same space, but do not unload it. You need your strong grip transfer tape and your strong grip mat. Those two things will work fine for a project like this one. Now that we've got our transfer tape in the middle of the mat, the next thing we want to do is put our 2 pieces of clay. And then I will take my brayer and just press down to further help adhere the clay and the transfer tape to the mat. And then when you're done, you have your piece in the middle, ready for cutting. So we have our dehydrator piece on the left and our bench piece on the right, again in the middle, because if you put it at the top left, when the cut is finished, there's no way to check the cut or manipulate it or lift up the tape without unloading it. You do not want to unload it after the first cut, because if you need to run it again, you want it to run in exactly the same spot as the first one. So again, do not unload it. If the cut doesn't go all the way through, you can rerun it by pressing your Cricut button or your C button twice, and it will rerun your operation in the exact same spot. Okay, so let's get ready to design our piece. Okay, we're in Cricut Design Space, which sometimes gets a bad rap. But I really like it. I think it's user-friendly. It has a lot of different pre-made designs. I wish it didn't cost money or didn't have a subscription, but most things do. So this is what you use for Cricut. There is another software for the silhouette, which is quite I think you can do a bit more with it, but for most projects, I find Design Space works well. So you want to come to Design Space, and we're going to start a new project. And so just go to the top and click New Project. I'm just waiting for the video to catch up with me here. And when we open the New Project window, we're going to go to Shapes. And Design Space has been improving this a lot lately. It used to be just the basic shapes, but there's a lot more here now. And we're going to choose this kind of Moroccan Egyptian fan shape. And this is what we're using as the basis for our earrings. Now, one thing I like to do is mimic the size of my clay on Design Space so that I know exactly how big I can cut my piece out. There's no guesswork in it or not. For instance, each one of these pieces is about 2 inches by 1 inch, if I remember correctly. And so I'm going to come up here and check to be sure that I'm using inches instead of centimeters. And then I'm going to get a rectangle and put the dimensions in. And I'm going to imagine that this is my square of clay. I'm going to duplicate it so that I have 2 of them. And then we are going to, I'm checking to make sure it's inches. You can do that by going to your settings. And then we're going to duplicate this. And then we're going to turn them silver so they look like clay. Even though this is bronze clay, we'll have it a different color. Now, I could have done all of this to one and then just duplicated the whole thing, but it never hurts to see somebody else work in Design Space or a program so that you can see more of how it operates. So we just rotated it to 90 degrees so that it was vertical, again, to mimic the shape of our clay. And now we can use this as the measuring tool for how small or big we want our piece to look. So we just flipped it so that the fan is at the bottom, and then we're going to bring it to front. And so this is how our cutout would look on our clay. And we duplicated it. Again, we could have just done one and duplicated it instead of going through all this, but okay, so then we now have essentially what is going to look like on our mat, but we're going to put some texture on this piece to make it a little bit more interesting. So let's see, what am I doing here? There we go. And so I'm going to the pre-made textures in Design Space and looking to see what I want to use. There's a gajillion of them out there, so I think it's the premium. The subscription is $9.99 a month. There's a lot of free designs and textures you can use without the subscription, but with the subscription, it's just exponential. Okay, so we're going to use this. Not the Christmas tree, but we're going to use the texture that's on the Christmas tree. So what I'm going to do is take my little fan and put it on the Christmas tree, select both of them, and I'm going to do a slice. What slice does is exactly what you see. It'll cut out your shape from whatever texture or color or other object that you choose. And again, we're going to duplicate it instead of doing two of them. Now, the reason that I am putting my texture on top of the original shape is because once the texture is finished cutting on the Cricut, we still need to cut the outline of the earring, not just the texture. So I have my earring and then I have my texture in it, and what I'm doing now is attaching them so that Cricut recognizes that they are one thing. The texture, because I'm on my Explorer and it doesn't really do engraving, I am making the texture a foil, and that way it will do the texture first and then come back and do the cut. And also, if you use a third-party tool like the Amy Shamus or the Zoom tool, you get a really nice engraving on your metal clay. And that's what we're going to use here with the Explorer 2. Again, it doesn't have an engraving function, but you can engrave with the Explorer. Here, I had to go back and hide my squares for the metal clay because we're not going to cut those out. We're just going to cut out the earrings themselves. Now look in the middle of your mat and get your guidelines for where your clay pieces are going to be cut out. You have horizontal and vertical lines that tell you where you are on your mat. So we look at our metal clay pieces and determine where our earrings are going to be, and we move our earrings on our mat, on our cutting mat, and put them exactly where we want them to be cut on the mat. For instance, one of these, I can't really see in the video, but like one is probably, it looks like a 4 vertical, 5 horizontal. Anyway, get your location on the mat, and you want to mirror that in Design Space. Then you need to choose your material. For 3 cards thick metal clay, you can do medium cardstock, or you can do cardstock plus. Both of these work really well. You can see here, I'm just going through all the different materials that are available. If you are doing a thicker piece, of course, you might want to go to heavy cardstock, or you may just want to leave it at medium cardstock and cut it twice. Cutting it twice is good because it doesn't put too much pressure on the metal clay and make it crumbly. It gives you nice clean lines. Okay, so we're going to use medium cardstock, and it's asking for the foil tool. We're not going to use a foil tool here. We're going to use the zoom tip. Again, the Amy Shamas tip works good here. And what it's going to do, because our texture, we classified it as foil, it is going to cut the texture first. And you can see here we have our zoom tool in there. So it is engraving the texture. On the Explore 2, foil acts like engrave, so it's not cutting all the way through the clay. And now Design Space is asking us for our cutting tool. Do not unload. All we're going to do is we're going to take that zoom tip out of there, and that's what it looks like. You can get those on Amazon, or you can get the Amy Chalmers tool. It's also on Amazon. And then I'm going to put my fine point tool, cutting tool in there from my Cricut fine point blade. And then hit my C button. And it's cutting out our outline. And that's why we put the texture on top of the outline and attached the two, because we needed it to cut like that. Now, because we have it in the middle of the mat, you can look at it, or you can lift up a part of the tape if you need to and see whether or not your cut went all the way through. If you had it in the left part of the mat, as you can see, that's where the carriage for the Cricut is. There's no way you could tell without unloading it. So remember, we don't want to unload it. Do not punch that flashing button right now. We don't want to unload it. What I want to do is I want to redo my cut, but I do not want to redo my texture. So I'm fooling the Cricut here. I'm telling it to run, but I'm not putting a tool in it because I don't want it to really go over the texture. I'm just letting it pretend that it's redoing the texture. And that's what I like about the Explorer, is that you have that versatility. Because remember, when you rerun it, it's going to rerun both operations, not just the last one. Okay, so I am going to put my fine point blade back in here because this is what I want it to repeat. And there we go. And that looks like a good cut. Okay, so I'm happy with that. What I do is see, and I'm just checking here to make sure that the cut went all the way through, or to see if I need to rerun it. And again, if you're in the middle of the mat, that makes it easy to check. Okay, so now I did press the unload button so that the mat would be unloaded. The way I like to remove the clay from the mat, and you see my very well used tissue blade there, is just to put it in between the clay and the transfer tape and very gently slide it back and forth, and be careful because your finger is there. But you see how easily it comes away from the clay when the cut is right. The back is nice and smooth. The front has our texture on it and has cut out our Moroccan fan shape. So we have a little bit of refining to do, but not much actually. On these, I'm going to actually set a fire in place opal. And Holly Gage had these earrings on her blog, but the fire in place opal really dressed it up and made this texture pop because of the colors on the gold browns. Okay, so we've done this one here. Oh, and I'm showing you here that nothing is wasted. You can either grind the leftovers up, which I do. I use a coffee grinder, and I grind them up, reconstitute them, and reuse them. Put a little flex in there. Or you can do something, I think I'm fixing to show you in this video, where I just get one of the paper punchers. Yeah. You know, it's already nice and smooth and dry. And get your tissue blade in. There you go. Slide it back and forth until it comes off. That tape really grips. You know, unless I'm using a really thick piece of clay, or I have a piece that it's doing a whole lot of cuts, I don't even have to use tape, as you can see here. But if you want the security, or if you're doing a heavy piece, then just put masking tape on the edges of your clay. Still use the transfer tape, but also put a piece of masking tape. Okay, so you can see here what I did with the leftovers is I put it in a paper punch and I made a cross with it. And I actually made some cross earrings with this outline. And so, nothing's wasted. And there's the paper puncher. So we got an earring and we got a cross out of there. A Moroccan fan and a cross. Okay, then we're going to take our tissue blade and take the other one off. And, then we're going to follow our regular metal clay procedures and refine and embellish and polish this and make it into anything that you want. Earrings are very easy on the Cricut, as you can see. And I'm just showing you, once again, how to take it off the mat. And you can see how easily that slips off. So anyway, this was done kind of in a hurry with a voiceover. If there's enough interest, I will do some additional videos and maybe form a group. And we can delve into design space and using Cricut with metal clay, which gives you a lot of versatility. And, especially if you're producing a lot of the same things, it does help your productivity. So anyway, thanks for listening, and, play around with it. Start off with bronze clay where you're not spending a lot of money before you go into silver. And I think you'll enjoy it. Thanks for watching.